Marauders number 12 is a celebration of the return of Kate Pryde to life and to Krakoa, a canonically massive confirmation of the artist formerly known as Kitty's sexuality, and an issue that raises some pretty interesting questions about Krakoan law, mutant revenge, and whether the Quiet Council is truly prepared to run a nation. Today I'll answer, what does it mean for Kate Pryde to kiss a girl? Can mutants get away with murdering other mutants? What might Emma and Kate have in store for Shaw? And at what point does Krakoan law expand? How does Krakoa treat those who won't play by unspoken rules? I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comic book Herald. You are listening to Krakin Krakoa number 85. If you like the Comic Book Herald YouTube channel or podcast, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing. Spoilers for discussed comics, including Marauders number 12 and a little bit of X-Force number 12, will follow. Writer Gerry Duggan, artist Matteo Lolli, colors by Edgar Delgado, letters by Corey Pettit. Marauders number 12 opens with a celebration of Kate Pryde's resurrection after many failed efforts to bring her back due to her power set, a fact Sebastian Shaw was relying on when he murdered her during an assault at sea on Kate and the Marauders. There's a cool shot of Emma highlighting all the mutants Kate and her Marauders have saved, and it's a nice kind of reminder of what the Marauders' mission is, even though obviously there's been a focus on a lot of the Quiet Council intrigue between the Black King and the Red King and the White Queen, back and forth in the Hellfire Club, and of course the fact that Kate and her Marauders, they've saved a lot of mutants over time. We haven't spent a lot of time focusing on that. Of course, it's not all celebration for Kate, who was made aware of Shaw's insurrection via Emma's telepathy, having gained the story from Lockheed, the recently returned dragon companion of Captain Pryde. It's worth reminding that Kate can't remember what happened. The memory backups that happened during resurrection protocols are not down to the minute via Professor X, right? He makes backups at certain times, but there's going to be, if a mutant does die, there's going to be a blank slate, essentially, of time between the backup and their last, thought that they had before they died. And the second thing here is Kate's plans for Shaw are so devious that Emma laughs out loud and claps, okay? That's definitely setting the stage for something pretty intriguing as we consider what revenge might look like. For his part, Shaw plays things off like absolutely nothing has happened, presumably assuming Kate can't remember that he actually killed her because there were no witnesses. I suppose this is believable if we take it that the arrogant Shaw would discount Lockheed's status as a sentient being. Kate lets just enough menace slip into her voice when she says thank you for everything to Sebastian that Shaw might suspect she knows, but again, he may just be on his merry way thinking that he literally here got away with murder. For Shaw, again, he's a deeply, deeply arrogant man. He is presumably thinking there were no witnesses to tell the tale. As a reminder, why did Shaw kill Kate? Well, to put his own Red Queen/King in charge on the Quiet Council, right? Power is everything to Sebastian Shaw. To get his own sort of supporter and person on the council is a huge win for him in his view. It's pretty wild gamble, honestly, that he, to kill Kate thinking, well, maybe she won't resurrect. So after stomaching all the resurrection party she can handle, Kate makes a break for peace, quiet, and new tats, courtesy of Magic's transportation. This sequence is inarguably the most important in the comic, probably in the series, in that it puts on the page, for the first time that I'm aware of, actual confirmation of Kate's queer sexuality. This is a huge deal, still, in 2020, because representation of oppressed minorities matters immensely. I don't want to give this moment short shrift, so I'm working on a full-length Krakin Krakoa about the subject matter. It was actually in the works before this, but obviously it fits even better now with the events of Marauders number 12. I want to give the topic of sexuality in X-Men its full due before I really get in deep. There's both a large part of fandom that has read Kate as queer for decades, enormous comics history to support the idea, and the words of co-creator Chris Claremont to back up this development. So no, I will say it's not out of the blue or forced into the comic for no reason. There's a lot of substantial evidence here that backs up this development for Kate Pryde. So again, for me, this is an unquestionably positive, necessary development for the character. I do think the circumstances will require some extra legwork on the part of the creators, though, in this regard. First, Kate's just been resurrected, which for many X-Men readers means there are credible theories that some sort of mental manipulation is occurring for these pod people. If this thread is followed through, and for the record, I think it's too easy. I think Professor X lying and Moira hiding information makes for a lot more interesting story than for straight up brainwashing because it gives, the mutant people and all these characters we know agency in accepting the state of Krakoa and accepting this path forward. I think that's a much more interesting story to tell, personally. It will call Kate's actions into question during this time if there's some sort of mental manipulation going on. I think that would be a horrendous stain on the characters here, and especially on Kate Pryde in this development. The second piece, though, is that Kate literally just got the words "kill Shaw" tattooed on her knuckles, which kind of suggests some short-term violent thinking. Now, I know the intent here is a cool sort of, revenge fantasy, essentially letting Kate be the action hero, but again, I will bet anything there were already bigoted readers running around yelling about parallels between psychotic behavior and queer relationships. It's nonsense, I would say. Of course Kate will be thinking about getting revenge on the man who just left her to drown, hoping resurrection wouldn't work for her, but it's something I'm eager to see Duggan, Lolli, and the team definitely fend off as they continue to develop this in Marauders. For the time being, though, there's a lot more to say about that, and I'm going to. But for the time being, I want to talk about what's on Kate's knuckles, and this idea that Emma and Kate are plotting to kill Shaw. Because if we just accept that's the plan, we're looking at a potentially endless loop of mutant murder. If we look back at when the Quiet Council of Krakoa crafted the laws of the nation in House of X number 6, we'll see that they discussed mutant murder. Sinister even called for it to become law after Exodus threatened him. But the existence of resurrection actually kept this from becoming one of the 3 Krakoan laws. Apocalypse even implies that mutant murder is probably a good thing since it will test mutants to prove their worth. This is classic Ensaba, I would say, on the council. He says, "How will anyone, any of you, know that you are fit and worthy if you are not tested?" This actually gets mutant murder off the table as one of the laws. So instead, Jean proposes the real crime is a mutant killing a human, and this then becomes law. Now, I'm still looking at these laws now, sensing real holes. What if a mutant does openly murder another mutant, like we now know Shaw did to Kate, or like we see Kate and Emma possibly plotting to do to Shaw? What are the actual ramifications if any of these actions don't violate the Krakoan laws? I'd argue murdering a mutant potentially violates Make More Mutants, since you're literally doing the opposite of that, but again, with resurrection that gets nullified eventually, and it's not spelled out very clearly, again, in these 3 main laws of the nation. All we really know of mutant punishment is that the Quiet Council held a trial for Sabretooth, literally making the laws as they went, and cast him into an everlasting pit on Krakoa. Charles Xavier tells us here that Krakoa tolerates no prisons and can't pursue capital punishment because of resurrection protocols. Intriguingly, Professor X also mentions banishment to the non-Krakoan world, but Sabretooth is so bloodthirsty and uncontrollable that at least in his case, banishment is not an option. This feels like perhaps the best and perhaps only clear sanction for mutant murder for the likes of Shaw, who is not otherwise a raving murderous menace like Victor Creed. Could Shaw's crimes get him banished from Krakoa and obviously removed from the Quiet Council by proxy? Certainly something other than a waking, endless frozen torment awaits crimes not spelled out in Krakoan law, I would have to think. Again, we've seen absolutely no one else thrown into this pit other than Sabretooth, at least on the page. This is all speculation, though. Again, to my knowledge, we haven't seen a single mutant other than Sabretooth judged for crimes besides Sabretooth. Ironically, there's even been a fair amount of killing humans, although presumably all this has been done, chalked up to in defense of the nation, however gray and dubious that might actually stand up. So where then do Krakoans turn for mutant crimes? In Bishop's case, he turns to Hank McCoy, Beast, with the information that a Krakoan bad actor might be responsible for Kate's death. Given his role as director of the Mutant CIA in X-Force, it makes a ton of sense that Beast would have been leaning on Bishop for this type of information and would be deeply interested in resolving the situation himself. Truth be told, this is exactly what we saw from Hank this week in X-Force number 12 as well, as Hank takes it upon himself to arrest Colossus and parade him through Krakoa in a traitor's parade he's planning for all mutants with Russian ties. It's a gross overreach of presumed criminality based solely on national heritage, a heritage I'd point out that seems less relevant than ever on Krakoa, the new mutant nation. Despite their dramatically flawed approach, this dissection of the holes in Krakoan law does sort of explain why Beast would think somebody needs to step in and do something about threats from within. As far as we know, nobody else is actually doing this. Murder does kind of appear to be on the table. Which brings us all the way back to Kate and Emma's plans for Shaw. I don't think they involve murder. What would be the point? Even without threat of clear punishment, Shaw will get resurrected, with priority due to his consul status, and you're right back where you started from. You could make him disappear, Chicago Mafia style, but that would just get X Factor on the case to find him, and draw a lot of attention. There are other vengeful attacks, Emma making him physically ill every time he thinks about money. But again, those are less thoughtful and don't necessarily accomplish as much. So how do you bring down Shaw? Well, you take away the thing he cares about most, wealth and power. I fully expect Emma and Kate to work with Shinobi Shaw to bring him down, bring down Sebastian, to somehow remove him from the Quiet Council, and to leave him to watch their ascendancy as he sinks lower and lower on the hierarchy of Krakoan mutants. So yeah, they could have him offed, but letting him live to tell their tale is far more effective. Thanks everybody for listening. I'm curious to know what you thought. If you have theories or ideas about this comic, definitely let me hear in the comments as well. I look forward to all the Kraken Krakoa's responses as I release each video. If you are interested in ways to support Comic Book Herald and Kraken Krakoa, you can go on over to patreon.com/comicbookherald. Chip in as little as $1 a month. It helps me immensely. In particular, I'd like to thank the mysterious benefactors tier here by name, thanking them for their support of Comic Book Herald endeavors. I'm Dave. You can find my stuff at comicbookherald.com, at Comic Book Herald online. You can also look for the best comics ever and My Marvelous Year podcast for more from me. So again, big Kraken Krakoa specials coming on the weekends. I've also got a live, the first ever Kraken Krakoa live stream that I'm planning to do, a 10 of Swords prediction party. I'll be announcing that more next week, but that should be coming, I think it's September 19th. So not this Saturday as I'm releasing this, but the following, September 19th, 2020. So be on the lookout for that. I'll have some more info on some cool guests that I'm going to have to talk 10 of Swords with me as we get there. So thanks everybody for listening, and as always, enjoy the comics.